Nathan Rylan didn't expect the woman with tears in her eyes, and designer heels tangled in a box of books to change his life, but she did. "Hey, whoa, hang on," he said, rushing forward as the brunette stumbled, catching herself on a crooked stack of moving boxes. "You okay?" She blinked up at him, trying to swipe her tears away before answering. "Yeah, I'm fine, everything's fine." It wasn't, not even close. The curb was a mess of luggage, cardboard boxes, and shattered pride. And from the way the guy in the penthouse had just slammed the door behind her without a second glance, Nathan figured fine was a lie. He shifted his toddler, Piper, higher on his hip. The little girl squinted at the crying woman and whispered, "She looks sad, Daddy." Nathan nodded. "She does, sweetheart." He looked back at the woman. "You need help moving this stuff somewhere." She hesitated. Her eyes were puffy but sharp, like she didn't quite trust anyone, not even the guy offering help with a baby on his hip. "I don't know where I'm going yet." "Well, you can't stay on the sidewalk," he said. "There's a diner across the street. I was headed there for lunch with my daughter. You can sit, breathe, figure things out. My treat." She looked down at her expensive heels, then at the cracked sidewalk. "You don't even know me." Nathan gave her a tired half smile. "You don't look like someone who stabs people over pancakes." That got a laugh out of her, just a small one, but it was real. "I'm Layla Grant," she said finally, brushing her hands off on her jeans that didn't look like they'd ever seen a laundromat. "And no, I don't stab people, not even over pancakes." "Nice to meet you, Layla. I'm Nathan, this is Piper." Piper gave her a shy wave with her stuffed giraffe. Layla waved back and looked at the pile of boxes behind her like they were about to swallow her whole. "Okay, diner it is." The booth was small, the table sticky, and the coffee tasted like it had been brewed last Tuesday, but Layla sat across from Nathan, and Piper like it was the first time she'd felt safe in weeks. "So," Nathan said, cutting Piper's pancakes into little squares, "you got out of a bad relationship." Layla swallowed a sip of her coffee. "Yeah, long overdue." He nodded like he understood. "Been there." "You." "My ex walked out when Piper was 6 months old, said she wasn't built for diapers and bills." He shrugged. "She wasn't wrong, but I stayed. Someone had to." Layla looked at him differently after that. Less like a stranger, more like someone who knew how heavy life could get. Nathan leaned back in the booth. "So what do you do, Layla? I mean, when you're not crying on sidewalks." She froze for a second, then gave a tight smile. "I run a company. Well, I'm taking a break." He raised an eyebrow. "What kind of company?" "Tech, startups, boring stuff." Nathan grinned. "You don't look boring." Layla laughed, surprised by how easy it was to laugh around him. He didn't know who she really was. He didn't know she was the CEO of Grant Tech, or that she'd been in Forbes' Top 40 Under 40 just last year. He didn't know about the million-dollar contracts, the board meetings, the way she used to walk into a room and own it. And she didn't want him to know. Not yet. Because for the first time in years, someone looked at her and didn't see dollar signs. He saw a woman with ruined mascara and a broken heart and still offered her pancakes. 2 hours later, she was helping Nathan unload the boxes into the back of his truck. "You really don't have to do this," she said. "I know," Nathan replied, strapping down the last box, "but I want to." He drove her to a short-term rental he knew about, something cheap but clean on the edge of town. She paid cash and didn't blink at the price. When they carried the boxes inside, Piper tugged at Layla's hand. "You gonna come back with us?" Layla smiled softly. "Not today, honey." Nathan knelt beside his daughter. "We're gonna let Miss Layla settle in, okay?" Piper pouted but nodded. When Layla walked them to the door, Nathan hesitated. "Look, I don't know what you're used to, but If you ever need help or someone to talk to, I'm around." She looked up at him, really looked at him. His flannel shirt was frayed at the cuffs, his boots were worn, and his face had lines from too many sleepless nights, but his eyes were kind. And kind was rare. "I might take you up on that," she said. The next time she saw him, a week had passed. She was walking down Main Street holding a bag of groceries she didn't need when she spotted him pushing Piper in a stroller. She called out before she could stop herself, "Nathan." His face lit up. "Hey, thought maybe you skipped town." Layla walked up and smiled down at Piper. "I wouldn't leave without saying goodbye." "You hungry?" Nathan asked. "I was just about to grab lunch." "Always." They ended up at the same diner, same booth, same sticky table. Layla started opening up more, not about the CEO stuff, but about her parents, her ex, the pressure of always being on. Nathan listened like no one else did. He didn't offer advice, he just cared. And Layla found herself wanting to tell him everything. But she didn't. Not yet. That night, she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering how a man with no money, no fancy suits, and no clue who she really was had managed to make her feel more seen than anyone ever had. And that terrified her. Because she was falling. Hard. The rain had started just as Nathan was locking up his workshop, the soft patter on the roof a welcome distraction from the silence he'd been carrying all day. Piper was with his sister, for the evening one of the rare nights he had to himself, and he should have gone straight home. But instead, he found his truck turning down a familiar street. Layla's rental sat tucked between a shuttered barber shop and a boarded-up bookstore. The porch light flickered against the gray sky, and through the front window, he caught a glimpse of her silhouette pacing, phone pressed to her ear. He hesitated by the curb, wondering if this was a bad idea. They hadn't made any plans, but something had been off the last time they spoke. Her laugh hadn't quite reached her eyes, and she'd fidgeted with the seam of her sleeve like she was holding something back. The door opened before he could knock. "I saw your truck," Layla said, stepping aside. "You might as well come in." The inside of the place smelled like lemon cleaner and something faintly floral. A single lamp lit the living room, casting a soft glow on the scattered papers that covered the coffee table. "Did I interrupt something?" he asked, glancing toward the documents. She shook her head. "Just work, it never really stops." He followed her into the kitchen, where a kettle was starting to steam on the stove. She poured 2 mugs, handed one to him, and leaned against the counter. "I wasn't sure you'd come by again," she said. "Wasn't sure I should," he admitted. "Didn't want to make anything harder." Layla gave a slow nod, her fingers curling around the mug. "It's not harder, it's just different being here, being away from everything I thought mattered." Nathan took a sip of the tea. It was bitter but warm. "You miss it." "Sometimes," she said, "but not the way I thought I would. I miss the control, the rhythm, not the pressure." He looked at her then, really looked, and saw the exhaustion behind her posture. Not the kind that came from sleepless nights, but from living too many days pretending you weren't breaking. "I know it's not my business," he said carefully, "but whatever you left behind it must have been big." "It was," her voice was quiet, "but I'm not going back." Nathan didn't press. Instead, he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded sheet of construction paper. Piper's crayon drawing was lopsided and messy, a stick figure with wild brown hair standing beside a smaller one with a triangle dress. Above them, a sun with a smiley face beamed down from the corner. "She drew this for you," he said you needed wall art." Layla's lips parted as she took the drawing. She remembered my favorite color. "Hard to forget when she asked you about it 8 times. She laughed, and this time it reached her eyes. They sat on the couch afterward, the silence between them easy. The stack of papers on the table remained untouched, and Layla didn't seem in any hurry to return to them. "I never asked what you do," she said suddenly. Nathan rubbed his jaw, a little self-conscious. "I do custom woodwork, cabinets, furniture, some home repairs when the bills stack up." "Your own business?" "Kind of, a rent space in a shared shop, nothing fancy." She tilted her head. "You ever think about expanding?" He gave her a look. "With what capital? My biggest investor is a 7-year-old who pays in macaroni art." Layla smiled, but didn't laugh. "If you ever wanted help putting together a proper plan, I could walk you through it." Nathan raised an eyebrow. "You give business advice often." She hesitated, then said, "I used to." He didn't press, but the edge of something unspoken lingered between them like smoke. Later, when he stood to leave, she walked him to the door. "Nathan," she said, just before he stepped outside. "Yeah. Tonight helped." He nodded, "Anytime." The rain had stopped. The street glistened under the lamplight like glass, and for the first time in a long while, Nathan didn't feel like the weight he carried was his alone. 3 days later, Layla showed up at the shop unannounced. Nathan looked up from the workbench, saw her in jeans and a windbreaker, her hair pulled back, and blinked in surprise. "You checking up on me?" "I was in the area," she said, scanning the space. "This is where the macaroni art magic happens." "Hey, don't knock it. Piper's work is very avant-garde." Layla smiled, then pointed to a sleek walnut cabinet half-finished on the bench. "That yours?" "Yeah, custom job for a couple in the Heights." She walked around it slowly, running her fingers along the grain. "You're good." "Thanks." "I mean it, this is gallery quality." He leaned against the table. "You know a lot about furniture." "I know quality when I see it." She didn't stay long, but before she left, she handed him a folder. "What's this?" he asked. "Just something to read, in case you ever want to turn this place into more than a side hustle." He opened it after she left. Inside were notes detailed, meticulous, and full of terms he hadn't seen since high school economics. But it was clear. She knew what she was talking about. And she'd done it all for him. The next time they met, it wasn't by accident. Nathan showed up at her door with coffee and questions. "I don't know what EBITDA means," he admitted, handing her the folder. "Then we'll start there." They sat at her tiny kitchen table for hours, papers spread between them. Layla explained things with the patience of someone who had once stood in front of boardrooms, but without the condescension. "You're a natural," Nathan said, jotting down a figure. "I'm a control freak," she corrected. "There's a difference." But he could see the way her eyes lit up when she talked about projections and scalability. Like she was remembering who she used to be before she ran. As he packed up to leave, Layla leaned against the doorframe. "You're not what I expected," she said. "Neither are you," he replied. And still, neither of them said what was pulling them closer every time they met. But the space between them was shrinking, and the truth, it was starting to rattle its cage. Nathan didn't ask why Layla hadn't returned his call the night before, but when she stepped into the workshop the next morning with her jaw tight and her phone clutched like it had betrayed her, he didn't have to. "I need to use your tools," she said, brushing past him. He didn't stop her, just crossed his arms and watched as she grabbed a small hammer and a block of scrap wood from the supply shelf. She walked straight to the back wall, set the wood down on the floor, and started pounding. Not hard enough to make a dent, but sharp, controlled strikes with a rhythm that said she'd done this before. Nathan waited until the 5th swing before speaking. "Want to talk about it?" Layla paused, lifting her eyes to him. My father's attorney showed up at the rental. He wants me to sign something. A non-disclosure, apparently, about my stepping down. His brow furrowed. Why would you need a non-disclosure to leave a job? You weren't in the CIA. She gave a short laugh, but it didn't reach her eyes. Because I wasn't just working there. I built it. Every pitch, every deal, every sleepless night. And now they want me to vanish quietly so their stock prices don't tremble. Nathan was quiet for a beat. Then, are you going to sign it? No, she sat down on the edge of a stool, letting the hammer rest beside her foot. But they'll make it hard. They always do. He moved closer, leaning on the bench beside her. So fight back. I plan to, she said, but I'm tired, and I don't know who I am without all of that. Nathan looked at her, not with pity, but with a steady calm that made her want to believe she could stand up again. You're the woman who helped me build a financial plan with crayons and scrap paper, he said. You're the one Piper asks about every night before bed. You're not lost, Layla. You're just between chapters. She stared at him for a long moment, then finally asked, Do you ever think about what you'd be doing if life had gone differently? All the time, he said, but it didn't. So, put shelves up for people who don't know what a level is. She laughed. It was small but real. Then her hand brushed against his on the bench, and neither of them moved away. Later that week, he invited her to the local fair. It was the kind of place with blinking lights and fried food stands, where the cotton candy melted before you could finish a bite. Piper was beside herself with excitement, holding Layla's hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. Can we go on the Ferris wheel? Piper asked, tugging them toward the line. Nathan hesitated. I don't know, kiddo. That thing creaks like it's held together with string. Come on, Layla said, glancing up at the rickety wheel. What's the worst that could happen? He narrowed his eyes at her. You say that now, but if we end up dangling at the top for 20 minutes, I'm blaming your confidence. They rode it anyway. Halfway up, Piper squealed and pointed to the lights below. Layla was quiet beside Nathan, her hands clasped around the metal bar, eyes fixed on the horizon. You okay? He asked. I haven't done anything like this since I was a teenager, she said. It's strange, being up here, everything looks so small. He followed her gaze. Makes your problems feel that way too if you let it. She turned to him, her face illuminated by the neon glow from below. I'm scared of what happens when this ends, when I go back to real life. This is real life, he said. This, right here, it's not less real just because it isn't in a boardroom. She looked at him, something unreadable in her eyes. Sometimes I wish I met you before everything got so complicated. I wouldn't have been ready for you back then, he said simply. They didn't kiss, not yet, but the air between them shifted like two magnets pulled just far enough apart to ache. The following Monday, Layla showed up again, this time at Nathan's house. He opened the door, surprised to see her holding a folded piece of paper. I wrote something, she said, and I want your opinion. He stepped aside, letting her in. Piper was napping in the next room, the soft hum of a lullaby spilling from the baby monitor. Layla sat at the table and unfolded the paper. It's a statement, the one I'm going to release publicly, about leaving my company, about wanting more than just profit margins and growth charts. Nathan read it silently. When he looked up, she was watching him carefully. It's honest, he said, and personal. Are you sure you want to share this? I need to, she said. Not for them, for me. He slid the paper back to her, then do it. She folded it again, more carefully this time. You're the only person I've shown this to. Why me? Because you're the only one who's seen all the sides of me and didn't ask me to pick one. It wasn't until she stood to leave that he reached for her hand. I don't know where this is going, he said, but care about you, More than I probably should. She breathed out slowly. Care about you too. This time, neither of them pulled away. That night, Nathan stood by the window long after she'd gone, staring out into the dark. He didn't know what came next. But for the first time in years, he wasn't afraid to find out. Nathan spotted the black SUV from the corner of his eye as he stepped out of the bakery, a warm bag of cinnamon rolls in one hand and Piper's favorite juice box in the other. The car was parked across from his truck, sleek and out of place in their small town, its tinted windows hiding whoever sat inside. He didn't need to guess long. Layla stepped out a moment later. She wore jeans and a navy coat, her hair swept back in a simple twist. She walked like someone who'd made a decision after too many nights of staring at the ceiling. "Morning," she said, her voice steady. "Morning," Nathan replied, holding the bag up. "Bribery for Piper. You're welcome to one, but she might fight you for it." "I'll take the risk." They sat on the bench just outside the bakery, the early sunlight casting long shadows over the sidewalk. Nathan handed her a roll, and she peeled the wax paper back slowly, as if stalling. "I published the statement," she said finally. He looked over at her. "How'd it go?" "Exactly how I expected. Half the board's furious, the press spun it every way they could, and investors started speculating about my mental stability within the hour." Nathan raised an eyebrow. "Seriously?" "I used the word fulfillment instead of profit margins. Apparently that's code for a breakdown." "You regret it?" "No," she said quietly. "Actually, I feel like I can breathe again, like I'm not pretending anymore." He nodded, then glanced at her sideways. "So what now?" "I'm starting something new," she said, picking at the edge of the roll. "Not a company, not yet, but something that actually means something. I want to build a program to support small-town entrepreneurs, people like you." Nathan let out a low breath. "That's a big shift." Layla turned to him. "It's always been what I wanted, just forgot for a while." She paused, then added, "I also met with a lawyer. I'm finalizing things with the board. Once I sign, I'll officially be out of the company." Nathan leaned back against the bench, watching a few kids chase each other down the sidewalk. "You sure you're ready to let it go?" "I already did. This is just paperwork." He didn't say anything for a moment. Then, "You going to stay here?" Layla looked at him. "Do you want me to?" "Yeah," he said without hesitation. "I do." She smiled, but it was different this time. Not cautious, not guarded, just real. Later that week, Nathan brought Layla to the community center. Piper was inside at her reading group, and the place buzzed with the kind of energy that came from mismatched furniture and donated books. "I've been helping them fix up a few things," Nathan explained. "They've got good people, just not a lot of funding." Layla walked the space slowly, taking it all in. "This is exactly what I want to do. Places like this, people like these, they need someone in their corner." "You planning to run for mayor now?" he teased. "No," she said, turning toward him, "but I'd like to start by helping this place. Could set up a workshop, maybe offer some free business planning sessions. Start small." He studied her for a moment. "You really mean it, don't you?" "I do. I've never been more certain of anything." The following Saturday, Nathan invited her over for dinner. Not takeout, not sandwiches, real dinner. Layla stepped into the kitchen, catching the scent of garlic and rosemary, and raised her eyebrows. "You cooked." "Don't sound so surprised." "I just thought you were more of a grilled cheese and applesauce guy." Nathan handed her a glass of wine. "That's only on Tuesdays." They ate at the table, Piper telling stories about a bug she'd found in the yard, as Layla listened with genuine interest. After Piper fell asleep in the next room, Nathan and Layla stepped out onto the porch. The sky was clear, stars sharp against the dark. I got the grant, he said suddenly. She turned to him. What? The one we applied for, he said, pulling a letter from his jacket pocket. They're funding the expansion. I'm getting a bigger space. Real equipment. Layla's eyes went wide. Nathan, that's amazing. I wouldn't have gotten it without your help. You would have, she said softly. You just needed a push. He looked at her, his expression more serious than she'd ever seen. You didn't just help with the grant. You reminded me I was more than just surviving. Layla stepped closer. You did the same for me. You saw me when I didn't even know who I was anymore. Nathan reached for her hand, his fingers warm against hers. I love you. She didn't blink. I love you too. He pulled her close, and this time there was no hesitation. No distance. Just the quiet hum of something finally falling into place. The next morning, Layla stood in front of the community center, clipboard in hand, surrounded by a small group of volunteers. She was organizing the first business incubator session, her voice clear, her energy focused. Nathan watched from the doorway, Piper on his shoulders, both of them grinning. You proud of her? He asked. Piper nodded. She's like a boss, but nicer. He laughed. Yeah, she is. That evening, Layla joined them at the shop, now filled with new tools and shelves lined with custom pieces. She ran her hand along a finished table, then turned to him. You know, I always thought love had to come after everything else. After success, after security. But maybe it's what makes those things mean something. He kissed her forehead. That's because this time it's real. They stood there in the quiet, surrounded by everything they'd built, not just the wood and nails and business plans, but the life forged from broken pieces neither of them had expected to matter again. And for once, neither of them wanted to be anywhere else. Nathan watched Layla step out of an old pickup truck that didn't belong to her. The engine coughed as it shut off, and the door creaked when she pushed it closed. Her hair was windblown, her cheeks flushed not with makeup, but from the chill, and her boots were dusted with dirt. She looked like she'd just come from someplace real, not a boardroom. You drove Hank's truck? Nathan asked, coming down the front steps of the shop. Layla tucked a loose strand behind her ear. He let me borrow it, said I needed something sturdy if I was going to visit the farms on the north side. Nathan's brow lifted. You've been out there. They're part of the grant program now, she said, holding up a clipboard. I figured if I'm going to be helping them set up new supply chains, I should see what they're working with. Nathan leaned against the post, folding his arms. You've been busy. I like being busy, she said, stepping closer, but I like it more when I end the day here. He reached for her hand, brushing his thumb along her knuckles. You've changed since the first day I saw you. I've stopped hiding, she said. That's different from changing. Nathan nodded once. You still planning to launch the full program next month? Already scheduled. We've got volunteers, the paperwork's in, and the first round of funding's cleared. He paused, and after that. Her lips curved, soft and certain. After that, I want to build my life around something that isn't built to collapse the second someone writes a new contract. I want roots. Nathan exhaled, something loosening in his chest. You've got them here if you want them. Layla stepped closer, close enough that he could smell the sharp scent of pine still clinging to her coat. This place, this town, you and Piper, it's more real than anything I've had in years. Nathan pulled her into his arms, resting his forehead against hers. I want you to stay for the good days and the hard ones, not because you're rebuilding, but because you belong. I do, she whispered. I really do. The following week, the town's fall festival filled the streets with music and the smell of warm cider. Nathan stood behind a table covered in hand-carved wood pieces, while Layla helped set up a donation booth for the Community Incubator Fund. Piper danced around them in a fairy costume, wings bouncing with every twirl. "Someone wants to talk to you," Layla said, nudging Nathan's arm. He turned to see the mayor approaching, dressed in his usual tweed and holding a folder. "She tells me you're the reason we're getting 5 new startups in town," the mayor said, tipping his hat toward Layla. "And that you're building furniture that's already got buyers in 4 counties." Nathan shrugged. "I just make things that don't fall apart." The mayor chuckled. "Well, you've got people noticing. We want to feature you both at the Regional Development Summit next month." Layla exchanged a glance with Nathan, then said, "Only if the first half of the presentation goes to the farmers, teachers, and small business owners who have been here all along." The mayor blinked. "Of course." After he left, Nathan turned to her. "You're getting good at this." She raised an eyebrow. "At what?" "Turning down the spotlight when it's handed to you." "I've already had it," she said. "This time I want to share it." Later that evening, they sat on the porch of the new workshop building, overlooking the field where Piper chased fireflies. Nathan handed Layla a small velvet box. She froze. "What is this?" "Open it." Inside was a key. Layla looked up at him, confused. "It's to the house," Nathan said. "It's not a mansion, and it doesn't have a view of the skyline. But there's a bedroom with your name on it, and another one with your name on it when Piper inevitably crawls in at 2 in the morning." Layla blinked quickly. "You're asking me to move in." "I'm asking you to stay because you want to, not because you ran from something else. I want to build a life with you, a real one." She ran her thumb over the key, then looked back at him. "You sure about this?" "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." She leaned in, kissing him with the kind of certainty that didn't need words. Weeks passed. The program launched. They held Saturday workshops in a converted barn, turned an old storage room into a children's play space, and built a website run by high schoolers Layla trained herself. Nathan's orders doubled, and Layla helped him organize a delivery system that didn't involve balancing tables in the back of his truck with bungee cords. At night, they cooked together. She burned rice. He forgot timers, but it was theirs. Piper learned to read bedtime stories out loud, sometimes skipping entire pages, but always wanting Layla to listen. One morning in late December, Nathan stepped into the kitchen, rubbing sleep from his eyes. Layla stood by the window, holding a mug, wrapped in his old flannel shirt. Snow fell in slow, soft sheets outside. "I've been thinking," she said without turning around. "That's dangerous," he teased, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "I want to buy that old brick building on 5th Street. "What for?" "A community hub. Workspace, mentoring rooms, maybe even a little market. I want a permanent home for everything we've started." Nathan pressed a kiss to her temple. "Then let's buy it." She turned in his arms. "Together." "Everything from here on out," he said, "is together." Layla kissed him, long and slow, then whispered, "You saved me." "No," he said, "you saved yourself, just reminded you how." They watched the snow fall outside, the world quiet around them. And inside, there was nothing left unresolved. No secrets, no masks, just 2 people who had found something rare, something real. Together, they had built a life that wouldn't fall apart. And this time, it would last.